In these most recent sessions, we've been talking about how to become a positive person and the importance of being a positive person versus being a negative person. Nobody wants to be around negative people. You can't get away from them fast enough. When you're positive, when you're a positive person, I'm not talking about positive thinking, but just a positive person, people love to be around you. They want to hear more. We're looking at one of the elements of becoming positive is building fulfilling relationships. Why? You can be the most positive person in the world, and yet if you have bad relationships at work, bad relationships at school, bad relationships with your children or your spouse, it's hard to remain positive. So we're doing everything we can to be positive, and this is one of the things. So what we're on is number 6, which is quickly resolve conflicts the right way. Most people, me included, our nature is to resolve a conflict the wrong way. Get up, walk out, say some very unkind words, go negative, go emotional. One therapist calls it going limbic, because the limbic area of your brain is where all your feelings are stored. And we can do that. In fact, it's common to go limbic. It's common to flip your lid, get angry. Conflicts over almost nothing can very quickly widen and deepen and go ballistic. Gary Smalley said that most conflicts that escalate, the escalation has nothing to do with the problem that created the conflict. What happens is a problem creates a conflict, and then we go improperly. We go ahead and criticize the person for their past actions, criticize their character, use superlatives, and we're out of control. And then the conflict ends rather than being resolved. It really isn't resolved. So Gary points out, and we might have to divide this one into 2 sessions because the first one is so cool, that there are 5 levels of communication during conflict. And how intimate the levels of conflict reflect how intimate we can really be with that other person. Usually we go 3 levels deep in communication, and then we don't go to the 4th and 5th level. And yet it's the 4th and 5th level of communication where the deepest levels of intimacy are. But we tend to avoid those because that's where conflict begins, usually. It may start in 3, and just that conflict starting in 3 keeps us from going to 4 and 5. So number 1 level of communication is cliches. How are you this morning? Good. How are you? Good. What's the weather like? Oh, it's nice outside. Okay, those are cliches. You can answer those questions without any risk of being challenged, any risk of being criticized. So that's easy. Number 2 level of communications, you move from cliches to facts, And who won the game last night? Well, we won by 6 points. Now we're getting into facts. Still no arguments, right? Still no conflict, no risk. Level 3, and here's where we get in trouble, opinions. Why do we get into conflict when we share opinions? Because very few of us on earth share the same opinion about everything. And today we were talking about basketball because I live here in Utah, and the Utah Jazz are now the number 1 rated NBA team in the country. For many years, we've had season tickets to the Jazz. And so it's going back and forth. And my brother-in-law said, "Do you guys still have season tickets?" And I said, "No." When we saw all the NBA players taking a knee during the national anthem, we called the Jazz and said, "Thank you, but we no longer want to come watch these guys." And we were very offended. My dad, as I've mentioned before, was a World War II bomber pilot. He risked his life every time he got into the plane. He had horrible, horrible, horrible experiences, even though he was a highly decorated hero. He saw things that changed the way he was and who he was, but he made that sacrifice. Have grown up in a free country, free of totalitarianism, fascism, incredible economic opportunities and freedom opportunities. Didn't cost me a thing, but it cost my dad three and a half years of his life, the loss of a lot of fellow air crews that he watched go down. It was a hard time back then. And to see somebody take a knee to the national anthem, highly offensive to me. Now, I know people that aren't offended by it at all. Now, we have free speech in this country, and I'm fine with those people. They can do whatever they want. But for me, I decided I don't want to go to a game where players know so little about the history of this country and their freedoms that they would take that knee. So anyway, so just sharing that opinion with my brother and sister-in-law invited conflict. Conflict always happens as we share opinions. And it doesn't mean that we're right and they're wrong, or they're wrong and we're right, or vice versa. None of that matters. When you get into opinions, you're going to have conflict. If you don't know how to resolve the conflict, and we're going to show you in our next session the right ways to resolve a conflict and the wrong ways. But if you don't resolve the conflict at the opinion level, you won't go into the next two. And that's where you really come to know a person, and where real connection and union come together into one. And that's the goal of a relationship, that we be united. Okay, level number 4, that most of the time we may not get there, is sharing feelings, how you truly feel about something. Now, unfortunately, women have greater access to their feelings than most of us men. And if you ask a woman, how do you feel about that? She can go on for 15, 20 minutes, a half hour typically, sharing her feelings about something. You ask a man typically, and you say, how do you feel about this? He'll say, I feel fine. You know, that's not sharing feelings. That's going, see what that did? That jumps back to cliches. And it's in sharing the feelings. So ladies, be patient with a man when he only gives you a one-word answer. Say, well, what does fine mean? Did you have a good day at work? No. Well, what made it not good? Such and such. You know, I see you can go levels deeper. We tend to be afraid to share our feelings. Just me sharing my feelings about men taking a knee, probably half the country right now and half of the viewers of this are going to say, oh, that just makes me mad. You must be racist. You must be this. I'm not any of that. It's just I don't feel like going anymore. The fun of it was always just a delight for me to go to the Jazz games. I went for more than a couple decades, and so I miss it a little bit. And maybe we'll go. Maybe we'll get over it. I'll get over it someday soon. We'll see. Maybe I'll go to the championships. Maybe Jazz will be in the championships. Okay, number 5, and here's where the greatest opportunity for unity and really coming together with someone is the 5th level. And that's where we share our needs. And most people don't feel safe in a relationship to share their needs, because in the past, when they've shared feelings or needs, they get criticism, they get ridicule. What are you talking about? I can't believe. Why is that a need? That's not a big need. Well, it's not a big need to you maybe, but it might be a big need to that other person. And so rather than take that risk, we pull back and we don't share our needs. Gary gives something that is, and we'll close on this, a great thing to do in any relationship that's important to you. You can do it with your kids, a little harder with the kids, but you can do it with your spouse or somebody that's your best friend. I have a best friend named Jim Shaughnessy, and if I ever felt our relationship was threatened, I could use this same thing with Jim. And here it is. You ask the question, on a 1 to 10, Where would you put our relationship right now? 10 being great, hallelujah, we're almost in heaven. 1 being, I can't even believe I'm in this relationship. If there was any way out, I'd look for it. Okay, that's a 1 to a 10. And you can use it not only for your relationship, so you can say to anybody on a 1 to 10 right now, where would you say our relationship is? Now, typically men rate relationships higher than women. And so guys, don't feel bad if the woman you're talking to rates the relationship lower. Don't get exasperated. What do you mean it's only a 5? None of that. You don't want to show a reaction, but you want to know where it really is. You can say that about anything in specific in our relationships. You could say, as far as the amount of time that we have at home together, the one-on-one time, we watch so much TV, we talked. Where do we stand on our one-on-one time? On a 1 to 10, is it a 5, a 7, a 10? And then they talk. Now that's question number 1. Question number 2 is the most important. And that is, what would it take right now? What could I do right now that could raise our relationship from a 5 to a 7? And they might say, well, you could do this and that and this and that. Say, wait a minute, so important and I want to honor you, let me write it down. I could do this. So you mean if I do those three things, we'd raise our relationship 2 whole points. And so that's the second question is the one that's most important. And it works both ways. You can then ask, you can go after that. You say, well, that takes us to a 7. What would it take to get our relationship to a 9? And maybe your spouse would say, there's nothing that's going to get it that high. Are you kidding me? Look at the way you spend your days. Look at how we spend our nights. It's not going to get up to a 9. Don't answer that way. Think about it. If what does it take to move any area of your relationship or the relationship up or down? That little simple skill set can completely change a relationship, and it can do it very quickly. A lot of times we don't meet the needs of our spouse or a dear friend because we're not even aware of them. So when we do that little drill on a 1 to 10, where are we now on a 1 to, okay, what can I do to raise it 2 or 3 or 4 points? What's going to happen is I'm going to discover what the needs of the other person are, and then I can write down a note. And men are great. When you give us a list of things to get done, we usually get them done. And I know I can do this, this, and this, and strengthen my relationship with my son or my daughter. Do this, this, and this, and I can strengthen my relationship at home. So that's all we're going to look at right now. What we're going to cover in our next session, and it'll take the whole session, we're going to look at Gary Smalley's rules for conflict. There's a bunch of don'ts and there's a bunch of do's. Unfortunately, I have done all of the don'ts many times. And I'm almost afraid to share this because my son is in this business with me and he'll say, gee, Dad, you have it right in your book and you shared it and you still do it. Yes, I do. And we're going to look at conflict do's, things you can do to really quickly and positively resolve conflicts. So that's where we'll be next time.